Well, I'll kick off with the Pre-Aztec Origins. How much do you know about Pre-Aztec Origins, Rob?
How much does anyone know about pre-Aztec origins? Not a lot.
Not a lot.
I think, like, Mesoamerican historians probably they're like, yes, I know everything,
Of
but
course I know everything. Of
to me and
course.
you.
You fools. Nah, it's actually really cool. It's really cool. So many of the nomadic hunter-gatherers I mentioned in the intro, they would make their way down North America and eventually reach parts of modern-day Mexico, especially, specifically somewhere called the Valley of Mexico, where there used to be a lake called Lex. Sorry, I keep fumbling this one, right? Lake Texcoco,
Coco.
Lake Texcoco, Lake Texcoco. This is the bit
Lake
where I'd like
Texcoco,
to
yeah.
say just how difficult it's been preparing for this episode in this series. If you thought we were bad at pronouncing words before, oh boy, is this series going to be tough. We have tried our absolute best, but this is just some hard stuff. Like, we should maybe put some of the words on the screens just so you guys know. Like, it's
Yeah,
all
people can see what
consonants.
we're trying to pronunciate.
It's like words that are like 20 characters long with like 3 vowels. And it's just so difficult to work with. But anyway, we'll do our best. But there's also different pronunciations depending on it's like the native Nahuatl or Spanish. So we're gonna fumble through it, and please forgive us. So anyway, here in the Valley of Mexico, which for those of you who are watching, I've put a little map up of Mexico on the screen of the modern day. For those of you who are just listening, Lake Texcoco, did I say that right, Rob? Lake
Close.
Texcoco, Coco, Lake
Coco.
Texcoco, the lake. Let's just call it the lake. It's where is it Mexico City?
Mexico
That's the
City.
one. That's where Mexico City is today, the capital of Mexico, and that's not a coincidence, by the way. But we'll get to that in a future episode when we get to it. So, around this lake, these peoples would begin to settle and they would leave their nomadic ways behind. But if we move forward in time now, looking at roughly 100 BCE to 600 CE, while the Roman Empire was going strong in Europe, there was a place in Mesoamerica called Teotihuacan. I think I did that one, I practiced that one hard. So, this was a massively influential place, and actually, as far as archaeologists can tell, they were the first to create the pyramid structures that we associate with Mesoamerica today. If Rob, maybe you jump to the next slide, just for those who are watching. I've put up some pictures of Teotihuacan today. As in, this is what it looks like right now. It's an epic tourist site, and I'd love to go to Mexico someday to see it. So maybe we do a live stream out there,
Yeah.
Rob. you know, let's
A little cheap holiday over to Mexico, not far.
yeah. So yeah, drop us a like if you want to see that happen someday. Anyway, unfortunately, we don't know much about this civilization. But one of the cool things we do know about them is that they use loads of rare green obsidian found only in their area. So if you jump to the next one, Rob, for listeners, this green obsidian is it's like a very shiny dark rock with like a green sheen to it. And on the screen, I've got like an arrowhead and things like that. So this culture, I think,
It's one of the most beautiful ways you can be shot.
yeah, I suppose you admire it glistening through the air before it hits you.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I think learning about Teotihuacan and stuff, I'd never heard of them. So for me, it was very cool. And again, these lot are super influential if you consider that, as far as we're aware, they kind of started the whole pyramid thing that everyone after them would be doing. I've put one more thing on here as well, just to give you more of an idea of their culture. And it's this ancient mask. And while it's not made of the green obsidian I was talking about, it's made of some kind of green limestone that's in the area. And they've
It looks
teeth.
like jade to me, in just in my head. Well, I was like, it looks like Chinese jade
It looks
almost.
very jady, doesn't it? Yeah, but no, it's some kind of green limestone. And what I'm trying to say with it is, like, you can see they've painted the teeth and stuff, and we still have this today, so it's amazing. I think it's in some museum in Mexico somewhere. And they had their own arts, they had their own cultures, and it was really cool. And I just want to say that, this is the time period of Age of Empires 1, so if they wanted to add their first American civ, we've got a prime candidate right here. Of course, it would take some imagination, because as I said, there's not a lot we know about them, but I think there's a lot we can extrapolate, so it would be awesome to see that someday in game. Anyway, eventually, we know that Teotihuacan was burnt down sometime around 550 CE. We don't know why or how. Obviously, there's always the possibility of war or something, but there's also the possibility of some kind of extreme climate events. One thing we also know is that seemingly all Mesoamerican civilizations afterwards would look to their example, including the next great power known as the Toltecs. We're now looking at roughly 700 CE to 1200 CE. So we fast forwarded beyond that sort of Bronze Age, Iron Age kind of time period over to the Middle Ages. And the Toltecs were a powerful empire who would heavily influence Aztec culture, their religion and their architecture in similar ways to how they themselves were influenced by the Teotihuacan. See, so everyone stands on the shoulders of giants. And I've got an image here of some Toltec statues, I suppose you could say, that are still around today. Again, another epic tourist site in Mexico, no doubt. Just to give you a clue as to...
They're huge, those things do.
Yeah, they're massive. They're massive, yeah. Maybe I should have put a person there for scale, but there are loads of pictures of it online, and it's on the top of a big pyramid. You've got to climb the stairs of a big pyramid, and then these things, like, maybe you'd come up to, you know...
I imagine back then having to be able to pull, obviously it's in segments, but pulling that up those steps, obviously, probably slave labor, but, you know.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Anyway, for context, by the way, this stuff, the Toltecs, was happening in the time frame of Europe where Vikings were ending their raids and becoming Christian. Anglo-Saxon England was coming to an end with the invasion of William the Conqueror. So, you know, this stuff's happening in parallel to that. The Toltecs were so mythologized by the Aztecs that the word Toltec, it became synonymous with civilized. And that's apparently how they say civilized in their culture, the word just to say Toltec. Yeah, let's fast forward again now. We're going to go to the year 1300 CE. And all those villages I mentioned at the start around Lake Texcoco. No, I said it wrong. Just go with it. There's all those villages.
Actual was right, by the way.
That was right.
I think.
I think. Yeah, from the beginning of the story, all those villages, they're now great cities. But roaming nomads would still show up from time to time. The city people would see them as lesser barbarians. It's funny to me how similar humanity is, regardless of the continent. Like, I'm fairly sure every culture has the concept of barbarian. Like, you hear about it all the time. But yeah, so these nomads were considered barbarians by the city peoples. And eventually, this lake was completely full. There was no space for any newcomers to come and settle. All the good land had been taken. And at this part of the story, enter the Mexica people, spelt Mexica, just to add to the confusion. But the Mexica people, who would later become the rulers of the Aztec Empire. And I'm going to pass over to you, Rob, for that.
Okay, so the origin of the Aztec people probably is not certain. So I'm gonna have to like take some creative liberty for what I found and what I think is the best example. But as you said, it starts with the Mexica people. So, and say, as you said, you based their traditions, they probably were the nomadic hunter-gatherers. Again, that's probably, you can't say definitely with any of it because it's only based on the traditions they have now they had in the later time when we knew more about that. It's why they are where they are. So there's a few theories of why they moved south. So there's a couple main ones, which is the collapse of the Toltec Empire, or there is an option to do with fertility, because the north of Mexico is quite arid, so it doesn't get much rainfall. So the reason why, obviously, Lake Texcoco, why there was so many people around it, is because it's where all the main fertile land in Mexico is, and it's actually incredibly fertile land. It's like when you see all the variety of crops they grow now and in the past, it's amazing. Whereas back up the north, it's not so great.
Yeah, I heard in some of my research from the Pre-Aztec Origins as well. It's like apparently a lot of mammoths in this area, and they hunted them all to extinction in this area. And apparently today, that part of Mexico, there are still just so many mammoth bones, like all over the place, like mammoth graveyards and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, carry on.
Right. But then they go to the story part. We go, so one of the gods called Huitzilopochtli.
Oh my god, okay.
Instructed them to depart in search of a permanent home, the location of which will be revealed by the appearance of an eagle perched on a nopal cactus with a serpent in its beak. And that's immortalized in the Mexican flag today.
Yes, it's it is an eagle. Like it's got the snake in its mouth, doesn't it? In its beak.
And on the cactus.
And standing on the cactus. Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, that's really cool.
So after leaving, they served as mercenaries for other city-states. They apparently attempted to stay in some of them, and it is slightly disputed, but it may be in some of their more brutal human sacrifice methodologies that made them get kicked out.
I think I saw that. So I like, in my
Yeah.
research, I accidentally stumbled upon some of your parts, and I think I saw a bit where, like, again, I don't know which part is mythology and which part is how much like evidence there really is, but I saw a bit where apparently they were invited in by some peoples, and then they were like, oh, stop being mean to these guys. They're great warriors. We'll recruit them as mercenaries.
Yeah.
And this king one time like came back into the room, and his daughter was just being sacrificed, and one of the Mexica priests was wearing her skin on his face, and he came in and he's like, "What? Like, I invited you into my home, and look here." And of course, the Mexica people are like, "What? What's up? We're just a casual sacrifice, bro. Like, we're just helping you out,
But anyway, so we're now at 1325. So after a long pilgrimage, the elder members of the people spotted the eagle, the cactus, the serpent, and that's where they built a temple, and around it, they built a temple around that location. So on that island was in the center of Lake Texcoco. So this was obviously, as I say, currently uninhabited, whereas this whole surrounding area was. So the land there wasn't large or that fertile. Otherwise, a different city-state would have built there. But it was incredibly defensible, being far from the shore. So, and the city they end up building, by the way, was an absolute marvel of engineering. And we're going to get into some of that in later episodes, because some of the stuff they've done is genuinely, when you see the comparisons even to Europe, it is miles ahead. When the other technology they had was quite, like, they didn't have gunpowder, whereas people came with gunpowder, but they had these amazing engineering jobs they did in their city.
I believe there is like some quotes from the Spanish when they first visited the city, and they were actually like asking, like, is this some kind of dream? Like, does this thing actually exist? That's how crazy it was.
All right, okay, we're now going to skip about 100 years into the future. So it's now 1427. Came from 1325, 1427. And an incredibly important ruler of Tenochtitlan called Xolotl. He was the fourth king of the Mexica, and it was under his rule that the Aztec Empire formed. So in 1427, the dominant state and ruler in the area around Lake Texcoco was the Tepeyac. So they were allied with the Mexica, and up to the death of their ruler, Teotihuacan.
Oh my!
Really trying these lanes.
This is honestly, this is why did we pick these guys? Why did you vote for Aztecs?
So that apparently led to a succession crisis. So his son took over by force, but he was apparently not the heir to the throne. He kind of forced his way to be the next in line. And under Tesosomoke, the Mexica had grown very powerful, because he'd been kind of a big supporter of them, and Itzcoatl was allied with Texcoco and Tlacopan. There are two other city-states in the nearby area, and they overthrew Tepeyac because basically they had this succession crisis. They were weakened by it. They had the overthrow power. So then it was the same point. So it was literally the same point that Itzcoatl took to the throne. It was the same point of the kind of creation of this. And so then, interestingly, there's not a huge amount of detail about the war, but it ended with the Texcoco ruler, who was one of the three alliances, personally sacrificing the ruler of the Tepeyac.
Okay, so let's just recap here for those of potentially
There's a lot of names I've said.
Yeah. So Tepeyac is the enemy in this scenario, right? They're the enemies of the Mexica people, and the Tepeyac. Now, I might be wrong here, but they were quite hated by the other city-states in the region, right?
Yes.
Because they
weren't hated as they weren't actually hated as much when Tesosomoke was on the throne. He was actually a relatively popular ruler. It was when his son took over by force, who was apparently very cruel.
Okay.
And he was the one who made them hated. And it was then at the point where they have to remember they were vassals at this point of the Tepeyac. So they were giving them tributes. They were having to so it wasn't like they weren't hated, but it was a vassal. It was like that vassalage relationship they had.
So then the Tenochtitlan, I don't know if I'm doing my best saying that, allied with two other cities.
Which are the Mexica people, yeah.
Yeah, the Mexica people allied with two other cities, And this would be later known famously as the Triple Alliance.
Literally at the war's conclusion is where they formalized under the Triple Alliance with the Mexica at the helm, and that's the point where they become known as the Aztec Empire. So it's the Aztec Empire is the Triple Alliance.
The previous, the name I already forgot, the previous enemies have been destroyed, and now
Well, they've not been completely destroyed. They've just been kind of, because they don't really destroy. They just take them under their control, and they say you are now. We are now basically where it was they were their vassal before. It's now you are our vassal.
Yeah, okay. We're in charge. Look at me, I am the captain now, right? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
All right.
So just to reiterate, so as a regional war, this is not like the 30 Years' War, because we talked about that, where it's like countries fighting. These are all city-states. They all spoke the same language. They're all speaking Nahuatl, even the Tepeyac as well. So I'd say it's more akin to like when England was divided into kingdoms like Mercia, Wessex. They can have allies, they can have like vassalage, they can have fighting between them. It's more like that as a kind of understanding what was going on at the time. All right. So now, obviously, as the guys everyone doubted, these guys were late to the party. They now have control of the music. They're now on top dogs.
Okay.
And it was with Xolotl. Absolutely made the most out of it. So, interestingly, by the way, this is the same time period as House of Lancaster. This is the same time Henry VI, the Mad King, is on the throne. So in our House of Lancaster videos, we were talking about, by the way, if you want to go check them out in the early videos to have a look at, we were talking about the tail end of feudalism, whereas in Mesoamerica, feudalism was being created. So it was under Xolotl that he concentrated wealth, privilege, political power in the hands of his emperors, warriors, other nobles. So he's established this kind of new structure of noble titles, privileges, and revered warriors who took captives in battle.
Cool.
So yeah, it's interesting how it completely with obviously no knowledge of what's happening. It's similar structures.
The same structures form in both worlds, isn't it? Humans be humans.
I know. We have to take, by the way, all history up to this point, because I was telling you beforehand, I was like, a lot of the stuff before this point is mythology. So you have to take everything that I've said up to this point with a shed load of salt, because in 1430, Xolotl burned all pictographic codices for it to be rewritten with state-sanctioned history.
Is this the bit where they... I happen to know, is this the bit where they rewrote their history a little bit to try and make it sound like they were the true successors of the Toltecs, essentially?
Exactly. And this is when we see Luperculi, who is the god of war and the sun, became their most important deity. And this is when they became known as like the people of the sun. Interesting.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, as I discovered in my segment, like the Toltecs would go on to greatly influence the Aztecs, and then this is where it seems to really come into play here.
Yeah, so it was also, again, this is where they started believing that without their rituals the sun wouldn't rise, and this lays the groundwork for the Aztecs to become a regional power.
This is Rob from the future, or maybe the past, asking us either 5-star and a like on the podcast wherever you're listening to. Thank you, and back to the podcast.
Okay, cool stuff. So now, at this stage, the Aztecs are the dominant power in the region. Triple Alliance has formed. The Empire is really kicking off. I'm going to talk about the Flower Wars. But quick disclaimer.
I've been looking forward to this, by the way. I've been really looking forward to this.
You should. This is my favourite bit. Historians have mixed opinions about this stuff, so keep that in mind. It may not be completely accurate. I know we've said that quite a few times this episode, but it is important. Compared to the previous episodes we've done and different civilizations, this one is more, just generally, it's a bit more murky to know for certain. So I'm going to try to point out moments where there are particularly conflicting ideas, and you can decide for yourself. All right, let's go. The Flower Wars. In order to explain them, I need to explain war generally. Because you see, war in Mesoamerica, it was nothing like anything seen in the old world. Nothing like it. Firstly, the cost of movement was so much higher, as there were no horses in the Americas or any other animal that could transport anything. So this means that everyone would have to carry their own stuff and their equipment, their food, their supplies. They could rarely travel for more than 8 or 9 days, because they just simply couldn't carry any more stuff than that to last longer periods of time. So wars more than 50 kilometers away were a total logistical nightmare. It was just so hard.
Imagine if they'd had cannons. Imagine them trying to lug those and be like, 20 guys or something, just like...
Yeah. And I guess this is might be part of the reason why the empires of this area are less like quite like the empires of Europe and things, where these areas were very tightly controlled. But instead, once the city was conquered, it was like, okay, you're a vassal now. You can continue to operate, but you send tribute to us. You belong to us, kind of thing. As opposed to, I mean, sometimes during if there was a particularly rebellious city-state, they would put some of their own people in there and stuff. But that was actually quite uncommon in the area, which is different compared to Europe and Asia. So anyway, in battles, the warriors, they would spread out and they'd fight each other one-on-one, trying to knock each other out. So instead of everyone charging and sort of hacking and slashing, they'd all just basically get in a line and be like, all right, let's go. It's like a group of guys like having a fight, essentially. And they'd all be trying to knock each other out, because the idea was to capture...
Just like Queensby rules.
Right, I guess, yeah. A little bit brutal. So the idea was to capture the enemy and bring them back to sacrifice to the gods. This was extremely important, and you weren't considered a man until you brought back your first captive. Proper brutal stuff, this. The sacrifice would most of the time happen by cutting out and ripping out someone's heart while they were still alive, and they just sort of hold it like that, and it would beat in the air, you know, like proper movie level stuff, except, you know, it actually happened. The belief was that the gods needed sacrifice to keep the universe going, and there was a finite amount of energy in the world, and sacrifice was a way of fueling the gods. Without sacrifice, the sun wouldn't rise in the morning. We'll talk about human sacrifice and religion more in our Life for the Average Person episode, so subscribe or follow to stay tuned for that one. Promotion was based on the amount of captives you brought back. If a man proved himself, he could become a jaguar or eagle warrior. This was the equivalent of becoming a knight in Europe, and it is the only way a commoner could rise in social standing in the Aztec world. So you can imagine a lot of people.
It was like one they seem to highly respect power. Generally, is what I've seen. Like power is seen as the most. I guess it's similar to like kind of a lot of early societies. It's just you need to be dominant and you need to have powerful people. So if you show power, you rise up.
There you go. It's just with more sacrifice. And I will talk more about promotions and weapons in the next episode. For time reasons, I'm going to move on. But trust me, this is some crazy stuff. Like, for example, they had cotton armor. It works better than you think. You know, it's not like a t-shirt. I'll dive into how this stuff goes down. But yeah, like I said, follow or sub if you want to stay tuned for future Aztec stuff. So the Flower Wars, also known as the Garland Wars, what actually is it? It's a literal forever war where both states would fight but never finish each other off. That way there could always be a never-ending supply of people to capture for sacrifice. Nothing was more glorious than capturing men on the battlefield to be sacrificed or to die trying in the name of their god, who I'm not going to try and say because it's too difficult for me.
We see le Poctuli.
Ah, there you go. That's the one. So, I wouldn't even know how to spell that.
I've been trying that one. I've been practicing that one.
Good job.
I can't see any others right now, but Quetzalcoatl. I think
that is one. Yeah. Well, again, like we said, religion is common. That's I think that's the final 4 out of 4 part.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the ideal sacrifice was an enemy warrior, and that's why there was so much emphasis on this in battle. When taking a captive in battle, the capturer holds their hair and sort of stands over them, and he says to him, "Here is my well-beloved son." And the captive, right, while he's been held by the hair and looking up at the guy, he's supposed to say back, "Here is my revered father." So basically they're saying, "Who's your daddy?" And the other one has to reply, "You." So,
but I like as well, it's that kind of agreement. It's like you will say the right thing. You're going to try escape this point. It's done. I've been gotten.
I mean, probably at this point you've been brutally bludgeoned to have the point where someone can hold your hair like that. You're probably barely able to speak. But if you can, you're meant to say, "Here is my revered father." So these flower wars.
You say that in Xolotl.
No, I'll save that for someone in the comments. All right, so these flower wars, they were primarily fought against a people called the Tlaxcala, I believe. The Tlaxcala. Or Tlaxcala is how it's spelled. Now, for listeners, I'm going to put a map up on the screen which shows the territory across modern-day Mexico that the Aztecs ruled. And right there in the center you can see not far from their capital of Tenochtitlan, there is a circle of Tlaxcala territory in a sea of Aztec empire. So it does raise the question, like, how did they conquer everywhere around for kilometers and kilometers in all directions, all become allies in the case of Teotihuacan, and somehow not manage to take Tlaxcala, right? So actually, the Spanish actually asked them this, fascinatingly. And we know that when the Spanish arrived, yeah, and they were walking around with the person who was the ruler of the Aztecs at the time, Moctezuma II, and we'll talk more about this time in the next episode, but they actually asked him, they said, why can't you capture this territory that's right there? And Moctezuma replies, and this is his actual quote. Of course, it's probably gone through like 4 languages before he gets to English, but this is how he does it. We could easily do so, but then there would be nowhere for our young men to train, except far from here. And also, we wanted there to always be nearby people to sacrifice to our gods. So, because of this, the common belief is that the Aztecs, if they wanted to, they could have wiped them out, but instead, they captured all the area around them, pinned them into this particular location, and kept them around so they could keep capturing and sacrificing them, as well as just use them.
If you're a tributary state, you wouldn't want you would go, why are we giving you tribute if also you're killing and capturing our people? So I guess you can't have them as a tributary state, because then otherwise you want to get the tributes off them, you want to get the resources, whatever they're providing you, but then you still need to be
exactly, and they also, of course, to use them for training. And if you remember, like at the beginning of the segment, I mentioned that the cost of movement in this part was so high. So if the empire's borders got further and further away, in order to take your young warriors to go and train and bring back sacrifice, I mean, imagine the nightmare it would, like, how long it would take to actually bring sacrifices back. So that's why for them it was almost like this, almost like a, I mean,
it's like some Hunger Games things. Like these just keep them around to be like tributes for their slaughter. Basically.
Yeah, it's like a zoo, like some proper brutal stuff. And you know, if all this is true, it's a very cruel dynamic. I mean, imagine, like, it's no wonder the Tlaxcala and their allies in that area, because it wasn't just them, but they absolutely despised the Aztecs. And there were even economic sanctions on them, like, so that nobody was allowed to trade cotton with them, which, as I kind of referenced earlier, was how they made their armor. And nobody was allowed to trade salt with them. So this was intentionally to keep them weak. So, you know, and it's such a, as I said, it seems so cruel, so brutal. And this hatred that the Tlaxcala would feel for the Aztecs is very important to this storyline, because later, as we're going to touch on in the next episode, where the Spanish arrive, the Tlaxcala are absolutely thrilled to help them. But we're going to get to that next episode. Now, it wouldn't be right to skip the alternative ideas presented by other sources. Many historians nowadays, they do dismiss the idea that the Flower Wars weren't proper wars, and they were just like these sort of pseudo wars to capture people. Again, I'm gonna tell you the alternative idea, and you can decide for yourself. What this theory suggests is, see, these Flower Wars, they were major military operations, huge scale, tens of thousands of deaths over 15 years, and the alternative theory suggests that they were just as serious and deadly as any other war, but the plan was to slowly drain the Tlaxcala and their allies via attrition before eventually going in for the final full invasion. But the Spanish arrived before that ever happened. They were doing it this way because, as I mentioned, the Tlaxcala turned out to be extremely difficult to beat. There are versions of this idea where the whole concept of Flower Wars doesn't even exist. And in fact, the reason there were so many wars in succession like this is because the Tlaxcala and their allies in the valley there, they were able to hold off the Triple Alliance every time they invaded. Brutally bloody wars for both sides. What are you going to say, mate?
Yeah, because you could argue against to say that the other surrounding ones, they may have just given up more easily, or they've just conquered them more easily, and it's maybe to save face against the Spanish to be like, why have you not captured these guys? Be like, oh well, you know, we could, but it's just for these reasons, rather than it being a grand failing almost. Be like, oh, we didn't get an opportunity to, or it's not been as easy as we thought it was. We just go, we kept them alive just because. You can see that as being
absolutely something a king would say. It's absolutely. He's trying to impress these new visitors who, you know, Moctezuma was a bit afraid of them as well, because there were stories of their crazy technology. Again, we're going to get to that. But I wouldn't be surprised if he did lie. But there's even more to say on this alternative theory as well. There were moments where Tlaxcala actually betrayed one of their own allies, who was the dominant force in this little valley. They betrayed one of their own allies, and that's how the Tlaxcala, I keep trying to say this, it's getting harder and harder each time. Tlaxcala became the top dog in the region themselves. So this ally they betrayed, which I can't remember the name, but they actually joined the Triple Alliance for a short time. And even then, when they still couldn't fully beat the Tlaxcala. And so these other historians argue that if they were just kept around, like Moctezuma II said, then why would they even accept one of their allies to join their ranks? Because doesn't that defeat the whole point? You know, why would you even do that? So there you go.
Fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the two versions of this story. The mainstream version, which is the first one I told you, and the one that you're less likely to hear anywhere else. Look at us, the Real Age of Empires podcast, dropping you the scoop, the inside scoop. Yeah. So let me know in the comments which one you believe, because I genuinely am not sure. Like, maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle.
Me neither. Me neither, because they both make a lot of sense. Like, they both have real logical reasoning behind it, so it's hard to.
Yeah.
It's hard to agree with.
I really don't know.
Okay, my bonus topic. So I want to first start by just kind of clarifying, this wasn't exclusive to the Aztecs. This is more Mesoamerica in general. But did you know that the Mesoamericans were seriously ahead of the dental game?
Really?
Time period. Yeah.
Okay.
So we're talking tooth extractions, which that's not unusual, you know. But in Europe and other places, probably just a pair of pliers and just yank it out with a guy who doesn't really know why. Cavity fillings, but get this, they were the ones who started trying ancient grills, blinged out dentally. Bring it up on screen.
No way! I gotta see this. I haven't seen this. Oh, it's that little green obsidian as a tooth.
It's green obsidian, the tooth. Yeah, it's obsidian tooth. And they got little cap. You see the ones above it. They got like two little metal caps on it. So they did like gems, like all that sort of things, like obsidian, all that in their teeth.
Oh man, these lot were dropping American gangster signs, you know.
Yeah. But it's even more like, because that bit's really cool. But the Aztecs had professional dentists. They weren't just pulling molars, sticking. They weren't even just sticking gems in your smile. They actually had a whole toolkit. They had like herbal mouth rinses, prehistoric Listerine sort of thing.
Wow, these lot had better teeth than some people around today.
Yeah. Chewable dentrifices, which is like ancient like toothpaste gum. Wow. And they even had like primitive toothbrushes and astringents. Do you know what an astringent is?
No, what's that?
It tightens your gums up. They even had astringents.
What, like braces?
Well, it was a substance rather than being a physical object.
Okay.
Like braces.
That's cool.
They also had prescriptions for halitosis, gum inflammation, fever blisters, and they even had toothpicks that they handed out at the end of their appointments. Apparently,
these are the freshest breath around.
Yeah,
we need to remember this for the final tier list when we place it. Would you want to live there? Like, at least people's breath would be good.
People's breath good. Probably have all their teeth. I mean, again, look, this skull, this dead person's skull. Although I will say the gems are going to be only for the top level of society. If you're not a wealthy aristocrat, you're not having the gems in your teeth.
Tragic. That means we most statistically are unlikely to end up with some green obsidian bling.
Yeah, which is what you want. It's what you're aiming for.
Yeah, absolutely. Wicked. So my bonus topic is actually directly related to Age of Empires 2. And so if there are players of that game, I wanted to tell you about something that maybe you don't know about, especially if you're a more casual player, which is that there is a secret unit that they have access to. So you probably haven't heard of it, but it's called the Xolotl, the Xolotl warrior. It begins with an X.
Surely not. That sounds like a shallot, as in the food.
No, I think it's meant to be. Hold on, let me. This is how I remember it in my head. It's not the Mexica people. It's the Mexica people. So it's not the Xolotl people. It's the Xolotl people. Yeah. That's how it works.
Like it. Yeah.
So the Xolotl warrior, and Xolotl is just a name of one of the Aztec gods. It's the Aztec god of twilight, fire, lightning, and death, and guiding souls to the underworld. Man,
do you know if he's one of them? Because they got like the 4 or 5 main ones. Is he one of them?
I'm not sure. But I think
Okay.
these guys will be awesome in Age of Mythology. I'm just saying.
We'll go into the detail about it when we get into the episode 4.
Yeah, absolutely. But about where this secret unit is and what actually is it? Well, it's actually a cavalry unit. I mentioned there's no horses in this part of the world, right? So there was no actual cavalry. But in Age of Empires 2, if you manage to steal an enemy stable using your priest, then you can use their stable to create this unique unit that the Aztec have access to, the Xolotl warrior. It's essentially just a jaguar warrior riding on a stolen horse. And yeah, there's no historical example of this actually happening in real life, but I thought it was a cool touch, right? Like, of course, I'm sure if the Aztecs did have the time and access to horses, they probably would try and ride them. I mean, why not?
I mean, I don't want to do any spoilers, but if some of the stuff in the final thing, if some of the disease maybe hadn't have affected so much, maybe it would have been a very different story.